All right, let me tell you about the day Serafina Williams, a 16-year-old girl, was kicked out of her business class seat on a flight to Paris, not because of a mix-up, but because of pure prejudice, and how that moment changed lives in ways no one saw coming. Picture this: Serafina, on her birthday, sliding into seat 4B in business class, soaking in the luxury meant as a gift from her father, Robert Williams, a powerful CEO who runs a global logistics empire. She's calm, elegant in her simple black turtleneck and dark jeans, hair braided neatly, clutching a well-loved copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray. She's the kind of kid who'd rather wander the halls of the Met than crash loud parties. This trip was supposed to be her moment, a solo journey to Paris, a taste of independence, a break from the gilded cage of her life in New York City. But then the storm hit. Captain Harrison, the pilot, a gruff man with a sharp scowl and piercing pale blue eyes, appeared and told her, without even glancing at her boarding pass, that she was in the wrong seat. "Economy's that way," he said, pointing his thumb behind her. You can imagine her shock. She showed him her pass, clear as day: Serafina Williams, seat 4B. But he barely looked. "Must be some mistake," he muttered, calling over a flight attendant named Chloe to escort this young lady to economy. Serafina's calm cracked but didn't break. She held her ground, her voice steady but fierce. "I didn't sneak on board. This is my seat. My ticket was bought for me." The captain scoffed, mocking her, calling her a freeloader, accusing her of sneaking past the gate. The tension in that cabin thickened as passengers began to notice, some watching with curiosity, others whispering. The captain didn't just stop at words. He threatened to have her removed. Serafina's heart pounded, the sting of humiliation sharp, but she refused to be intimidated. "I'm not moving," she said. "You have no right to treat me this way." The captain's response was brutal. "I'm the captain. My word is law here." But here's the thing: the captain hadn't reckoned with Serafina's secret weapon, her phone and her father. As he barked orders and demanded security be called, Serafina quietly dialed her dad. Robert Williams, in his Manhattan office juggling a billion-dollar merger, muted his call and leaned in. When he heard the injustice unfolding, his calm cracked into a cold fury. He knew this wasn't about a ticket. It was about who his daughter was: young, black, and bold enough to claim her rightful place. Robert didn't just simmer in anger. He acted. He told Serafina to make the captain listen, to tell him who he was about to speak with: Robert Williams. When Serafina approached the front of the cabin, phone in hand, interrupting the captain's conversation, the man's arrogance flickered for a moment. But it didn't last. He refused the call. Robert's voice was icy when he finally got on the line with Richard Davenport, CEO of Orifly, the airline, and demanded accountability. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about a multi-million-dollar corporate account hanging in the balance. Back on the plane, chaos simmered. The captain, defiant yet shaken, was called urgently to the gate, a mysterious development that left passengers and crew on edge. Then, the announcement: Flight 714 was canceled. Outraged murmurs erupted. Meetings, schedules, and plans disrupted. But Serafina, standing amidst it all, felt a strange mix of vindication and disbelief. Her father's intervention had cost the airline dearly, and the pilot, Captain Harrison, was about to pay the price. Soon, Maria, an airline supervisor, approached Serafina with an apology and an offer, anything to make amends. Meanwhile, Captain Harrison, stripped of his earlier authority, stood pale and defeated, no longer the man who'd tried to push a young girl out of her seat. The fallout was swift and brutal. The airline grounded Harrison indefinitely, launching a full investigation. The story exploded online. A viral video captured by a fellow passenger painted the captain as a symbol of deep-seated racism and arrogance. Death threats and public outrage followed. The pilot's life unraveled. His marriage collapsed, his children bullied, his social standing destroyed. Financial ruin forced him to sell his home, give up luxuries, and sink into despair, haunted by the choices that shattered his career and family. Meanwhile, Serafina tried to reclaim her life in Paris, the art, the cafes, the history. But a shadow hung over her trip. She'd wanted independence, respect, a simple birthday gift. Instead, she carried the weight of a man's downfall and a movement ignited. She became a reluctant symbol, invited to speak on race and privilege, advocating not for vengeance but for understanding and change. Alongside her father, she founded a scholarship to help underprivileged students and promote cross-cultural dialogue. Months later, the FAA revoked Harrison's pilot license for at least 5 years. He moved into a small apartment, taking menial jobs, haunted by the viral video that followed him like a stain. One day, his former co-pilot, Mark, visited, bringing a small collection of money raised by sympathetic colleagues, a flicker of light in the dark. They shared a moment of regret, Mark confessing his failure to stand up that day. For Serafina, the experience reshaped her. She pursued law, focusing on civil rights, determined to use her voice for those silenced by bias. And then came the unexpected, a meeting between Serafina and Harrison in a quiet city park. The once arrogant pilot was a broken man, stripped of pride, drowning in regret. He apologized, fully owning his racism and bullying, sharing stories of his lost career, family, and nights spent in despair. Serafina listened, forgiveness in her heart, not as a pardon but as a bridge. She told him she didn't want his life destroyed, only to be seen as a person, not a stereotype. That moment marked the beginning of his long journey toward redemption. He enrolled in diversity courses, volunteered with at-risk youth, and reached out to his family, seeking healing he wasn't sure he'd ever receive. Their lives never intertwined again, but their story echoed far beyond that day on the plane. A powerful lesson on how prejudice's ripples can shatter lives, but also how a single voice standing up can spark change, accountability, and even grace.so. What do you think, folks? Was justice served? Or did the fallout go too far? Should a moment of prejudice lead to a man's complete downfall, or is redemption possible in today's world? Drop your thoughts below, share this story if it moved you, and let's keep the conversation alive. Because sometimes it takes one brave voice to shake a whole system, and that's a story worth telling. But now, she wasn't just studying for personal success, she was studying to change the system, to fight for those without a voice, to dismantle invisible barriers she had just faced firsthand. Sometimes, she thought about that Paris trip, not for its beauty, but for the collision that reshaped her. A part of her still felt weighed down, knowing the world isn't always fair, and justice doesn't come easy. David? He lived in the shadow of himself but began to face his demons. Diversity and inclusion courses, volunteering with troubled youth, letters to his estranged wife and kids, though he wasn't sure if they'd ever answer, were small, painful steps on a long, thorny road. Instead of hiding, he started to see that change had to begin from within. But the story didn't stop there. One evening, Serafina was invited to speak at a conference on racism and power in the airline industry. Standing before a room full of executives, pilots, and experts, she shared her story, not with bitterness or blame, but with raw honesty and a yearning to be heard. This story isn't just about me, she said. It's the story of millions judged by their skin color, their age, or their social status. It reminds us how small actions, a glance, a word, can unleash waves we never imagined. But it also shows the power of a voice that refuses to be silenced, demanding accountability. Below, many listened quietly. Some eyes glistened, some nodded slowly, beginning to grasp that change isn't just policy or rules, but awareness, empathy, and true dialogue. David was there too, a special guest, once the villain of a viral scandal, now sharing his journey. He didn't dodge his mistakes or make excuses. He spoke about lost career, fractured family, and sleepless nights filled with shame. But he also spoke of hope, learning to see others beyond bias, and a deep desire to make amends, even knowing some wounds never fully heal. The subtle interplay between Serafina's and David's stories in that room painted a complex truth. Behind every incident lie two sides, and real change happens only when both confront their own reflections. Still, not everyone agreed with how things unfolded. Some criticized Serafina, saying she was too harsh, that David's downfall was disproportionate to one mistake. They asked, should a 16-year-old be held responsible for a man's ruined life? Is society too quick to condemn over incidents tinted by race? On the other hand, many supported her, seeing it as justice served and a giant step toward ending subtle yet deep-rooted discrimination. They saw in Serafina the courage of countless young people standing up against power and prejudice. The debate exploded online, across social media and forums, even reaching government halls. The story became a symbol and a warning. It urged everyone to self-examine. Are we letting hidden biases steer our actions? Are we accountable for our words and deeds? And most importantly, how do we treat each other when no one's watching? For Serafina, the spotlight wasn't what she wanted, but she embraced the responsibility. She started a blog, sharing her experiences, interviewing experts and those affected by racism. She built a community of young voices ready to challenge and change mindsets one story at a time. David, still grappling with his personal losses, found solace in community work and speaking engagements. Though he would never fly again, he soared through stories of redemption and empathy, warning future pilots about the dangers of unchecked prejudice. Their story, a teenage girl, a fallen pilot, a moment of weakness, a courageous voice, became a powerful reminder that justice is not just punishment but healing. And in today's complicated world, none of us can afford to stand on the sidelines. So, what do you think? Mintru Vio. Does forgiveness and redemption have a place in our society? Or should justice demand the harshest price, no matter the cost? And you, if you were Serafina or David, how would you act? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and please feel free to share this story to spark the conversation, because sometimes it only takes one brave voice to shake an entire system, and that's a story worth telling.